Hello, Marvelites! Welcome to another episode of This Week in Marvel. I'm Ryan Panagos, a.k.a. Marvel's Agent M, joined by...
Blake Garris, and we have the pleasure of sitting with...
Jena Malone, a.k.a. I don't know.
AKA,
what's your a.k.a.?
Well, I don't have one. I gave up. Yours
you
was
gave
for
up,
me.
you never had.
You're Agent M, though. That's so cool.
I am.
I think yours for me would be, and you've been in, 30 movies I love.
It could just be an amalgamation of all the different characters.
Yeah.
Like somehow, Gretchen Ross meets Joanna Mason meets Rocket.
That'd be awesome.
Meets Nancy McCoy. It could be really rad.
Also, Of the Shoe.
Mm-hmm, Of the Shoe. Which
is pretty awesome. How long have you been doing that now?
I've been making music under the Shoe with my bandmate Lem J for about 6 years. We put out an album, just a little EP, 5 years ago, just kind of for our friends and family and for the birds. And because, it's all kind of based on, freestyle and improvisation. And but for me, it's I love storytelling,
mm-hmm.
and the musicians that I'm really inspired by, like Townes Van Sant and Neil Young and Nina Simone, they're just the ones that sort of capture your heart by, telling it a story and then basically ripping it out of your chest. So that's kind of a little bit like a comic book character.
Yeah.
If they were comic book characters, they would be these sort of broken-hearted, super wizards of heart juice music.
Heart juice music.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because when I heard it was improvisation, I was like, okay, so jazzy maybe or something, but it wasn't. And I'm curious what the improvisational aspect.
I spell that word a lot, and I'm like, wait, okay. What is it
how did you come to that in terms of making your music as opposed to a more traditional sound structure?
Writing songs and doing it. Well, I had singing Tourette's when I first started singing. I was about 21, living in the city. I was doing a play here, and I just started singing all the time. I couldn't control it. I was singing in taxi cabs and in elevators, and it was really not aggressive, because a lot of it was lullaby-based melodies,
mm-hmm.
just whatever. But lyrics, I didn't really know. I just kept telling whatever it was. So if it was the story about a man that just walked by the street, it would all of a sudden, I'm singing about this man wearing a red shirt, and then I'm in a taxi, and he's telling me about his mom and in India, and then I'm wanting to sing a song about his mom in India, and then so it was all just very much about creating a story about the very moment that you're in right now, which is not necessarily about the actual technical description of what improvisational music is, which is more of a jazz based, I've never studied music. I don't really know. So I don't know whether to call it improv, freestyle, or just, singing Tourette's. I don't know. It's somewhere in the middle of all of that. And then luckily I met this guy who's this classically trained pianist, and we just follow each other. I'll start up on this melody, creating a story about a girl that, lost something, and then he's kind of climbing up with me, and then all of a sudden the story drops out because, some birds came by, and all of a sudden then it's a story about the birds. And so yeah, it's really strange. I don't know how it started. It just kind of started, and now I feel like I've been able to harness it where it's not as uncontrollable and embarrassing. And so now I feel like I can actually, craft using that art of just the impetus of the moment. And then with this album, I started looking through a lot of the old freestyles. We have so many demos and things recorded and voice memos,
mm-hmm.
and I started kind of pulling the best and being like, I want to write this out. I really do want to create more of a linear narrative. And so on the new album, only one song is completely freestyled, and the rest of it is half freestyle, half written, and then half molded to then create a song. The title track on the album, I'm Okay, is a 5-minute freestyle about a friend of mine's breakup that I was sort of interpreting through me.
Sure.
Does that lead into your live shows as well? Do you ever improv anything on the spot?
Everything's pretty much improv'd. Even the songs that we know, we barely rehearse, because sometimes, it's could be an upbeat song and I'm tapping, and then in the moment everyone's kind of sad, and you just want to make it, a softer song, and you want to kind of tear it apart and, change tempos. And so, of course, my, Lem J, my bandmate's but can we just rehearse that one? Because I think it's a good one. Maybe we'll try it exactly like it is on the album.
How do fans react to that?
Yeah, that was where my head was going.
I've only heard of one band that's ever done something similar to that.
Oh, I think people like it. I mean, what I do is to kind of help them along to know what it is I'll ask for words from the audience.
That's awesome.
I'll be like, what was the last 3 things you bought today, or, describe, the last breakup you had, or, what's your favorite superhero. We actually asked someone, and they said Super Grover. Which is like, it was Green Lantern and Super Grover.
I'm okay with one of those.
I know. I'm sorry. I know. I was like, wait, is that Marvel? And so maybe I'll send it to you. Actually,
Yeah.
I have this. We did this impromptu show at the Gazebo in Central Park maybe 4 years ago, and we did a whole improvisation about the life of Super Grover and the Green Lantern.
That's awesome.
And then people were like, oh, you really did just make that up on the spot. A lot of people are kind of like, oh, but you kind of wrote that before. I'm like, no, we have no idea where we're going to go.
That's amazing.
And, the thing with that is that you can't be afraid of failure, because basically with freestyle, like, I fall flat on my face, like, 85% of the time. It's just the wrong pitch, the wrong word, the wrong melody. But then that 15% that you do get is the most liberating and fulfilling and life-affirming thing that I could ever, because it's not me.
Yeah.
It's just a channel, and it's just created for the moment, for the birds. And that's why we say it's just, we're not really creating music. We're just kind of creating moments or stories, that are in this moment, and then they're going to die, and no one will hear them again.
It's amazing.
I can see why people would be like, wow, you actually did do that, because most people don't have that ability to do something that creative. And, even if you're saying 85% of the time you're falling on your face, you're still creating, you're still putting this out there, and it's hard. Like, that kind of creation is very difficult for a lot of people. And, it's when you're in a creative field, whether it's for us in all the different fields of entertainment, for you, music and movies and television and stuff, you're in that zone a lot. But when you're not, when you, like, an accountant comes to you and it's like mind-blowing. And even for me, we had Joe Satriani in here the other day, and he was awesome. And he was just, like, hearing him talk about how he makes music, I was just like, you're an alien. You're a different kind of being than I am, it's awesome. It's super cool.
Yeah. Well, you can't, it just takes practice, really, I mean, like anything. And you think even it's weird to practice, something so of the moment, but the more you do anything, the better you get at it, and the more comfortable and confident you feel.
Sure, definitely.
The visual aspect of it too, you do a lot with that. Can you tell the fans about you have the YouTube teaser and all the other stuff going on?
Yeah, well, we because we do so many improvisational things, I'm such a like a video whore. Like, I love photography. I love like recording something or putting a laptop up, and we did a whole video album actually that was still not come out, that's just recorded via QuickTime on trains, planes, and automobiles, and so there was all this footage, and a friend of mine who's a really amazing documentarian filmmaker kind of one day kind of stumbled upon all this, and she was like, this is a really beautiful doc. Like, this is a story about a musical friendship and the interpretation of, creative impetus. And so she's been editing it for a bit, and I think pretty much next fall it's going to come out. So it's like this little documentary about kind of what we've been doing.
Awesome.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Has the improvisational aspect, like, bled over into the other fields you work in? Like, do you... And I know part of it is probably, like, you go on a show, a movie, whatever, and some are more structured than others, but has that helped you or changed the way you approach some of those things?
Well, I think that they feed each other, and definitely when I become bolder as an actor and I feel less afraid to fail on camera, all of that is transmuted into everything else. I'm not as afraid of, like, getting in the line at the DMV and, like, or like paying like a 6-month-old parking ticket. I feel like there's, like, you just sort of, it emboldens you to be able to do things that terrify you, and in any way, jumping off of something, creating a song, improvising within a scene, working with Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, you're just like, in every way, it definitely feeds all of it. But definitely when I started doing more of the playing on a street corner, people kind of know who I am. Maybe they don't. They're watching something and maybe they're laughing, or maybe they're crying, or maybe they're ignoring it. I mean, that was definitely, it's like doing play. Like, you definitely get to interact with your audience far more than you do as an actor. And so I think it definitely gave me more of a confidence to kind of shut out the world and keep creating no matter where I am, which is, I think, really important as an actor, because it's so easy to get kind of, caught off and someone's like moving a flag and, all of a sudden there's like a brush in your face, and sometimes it's really hard to kind of get all of that out and still be like a raw, bleeding, stumbling human. So it's definitely, if anything, it's helped me just stay human more amidst creating and less like ego driven.
Sure. Speaking of staying human, it's you do these, being an actor in a big budget film like the Hunger Games stuff. I'm sure you do like all those the crazy whirlwind press tours and media tours. That's got to be tough. But how does that? Because we often don't have folks come in here who are musicians and actors that sort of give equal time to both. So does like touring? How do those sort of affect you? To me, like the press tours, I feel terrible when we have our movies and they're traveling like all around the world for 30 days. It's like that's got to wear on you.
It's insane. But it's the older you get, the better you get at sort of being self-protective. And so that when I know I'm doing sort of whirlwind things like on a press tour, that's all I'm going to do. There's no need to sort of fit in elements of other creation, what I mean, besides just taking photographs or something, which allows me to have a little bit of, like a creative end of the day, like, I'm still a human looking at the world like it's a new, beautiful thing. Yeah. And I'm not just a robot, like in one conference room into another. So you just try to find ways to sort of protect yourself through that. But I don't know. I mean, if you love what you're talking about, and it's such a beautiful family with the Hunger Games, that, those press tours, even though they were completely like physically debilitating, your adrenaline and love are kind of very similar things. And so when you feel really like butterflies, or you've been working for a 20-hour day, it's because you love what you're doing, And I mean, I guess I've never been put in the position where I had to do something that giant and I didn't love it. So I don't know what that exchange is yet, but I've just been really lucky to just get to live off of pure like kind of passion and adrenaline, and that just kind of leads you, even if you're like haven't eaten and you like, it's like there's no sleep and you haven't taken a you're like, oh my God, like I'm gonna die, like so many planes, I've never sat so long in my life, and then but it's all for something that you really care about. And then, I mean, to talk about just with acting and music and all these other things, for me it's all storytelling. So for me, I can only really be creative in one aspect at a time. Whereas it's easy for me to be a businesswoman in all of it at all the times. Like it's easy for me to sort of talk about film and talk about music and then plan like a tour and figure out marketing and figure out merch and then, take meetings and talk about stuff with film and do interviews. But it would be really hard for me to be creating a character whilst creating an album. They're both kind of the same thing. You can only give birth to one thing at a time, but you can kind of talk out of your ass for the rest of it. It's like, that's kind of easy.
Yes. So you got a tour, Marvel. You came here. Thank you for coming by. Brief tour. Yeah. You didn't get to see how comics are made.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
we did?
Yeah.
How was that? Because from a creative standpoint, I mean, it's got to be pretty interesting to see how the sausage is made for a different medium.
Well, I love that you shove like 3 creative geniuses into a small cubicle, and then whatever comes out of that is basically what we see on the page. So I kind of appreciate that.
It's a brilliant pressure cooker.
Yeah, totally. And it was like, they can't really, they can't get away with a lot in there, I'm sure. So it kind of forces them to create their best constantly, which is nice. But yeah, it's rad. I mean, it's so beautiful. You can just see it's like people are here because they love it, and that's doesn't matter if you're making comics or making shoes. I mean, you can just feel it here in the offices. It's really, people are stoked to be here and to show up at work. So that's always nice.
That's awesome.
They'll sneak you in because you have a lot of fans here, so we didn't want the crowd to gather.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It could get weird.
Yeah.
We've seen it get weird.
Yeah.
I'm sure.
If you could choose a superpower, anything, what would you choose?
I mean, I've always said the same thing since I was like 7 years old, is the ability to shrink or enlarge anything to my own, want or desire, so that like I could feed the world with one piece of bread, or I can shrink my body down into like the smallest thing and like explore like this carpet, and it would be like, going to the Andes, you know what I mean? Like, it would be incredible. And then I could also just, like, enlarge myself and then, like, take a step and I'd be in Paris and I'd be like, oh, cool, easy, done. And then you just go back normal, and then some days you need to be a little bit taller, and I don't know.
Yeah. No, I actually think about that as a possible power often. I'm like, I travel a lot for work, and I'm like, oh, I want to get off the plane. I wish I had my car. And so if I could shrink my car, put it in my pocket, and when I get
easy.
out of the airport, boom, got my car. I don't have to worry about anything else.
Shrink all your friends. You're like, you guys ready?
Come on,
let's go.
My cats, if I could bring my cats with me and, like, just let them, like,
and then,
hang
like,
out on my
enlarge them
desk.
too much as you walk in, and you're kind of like, like this Egyptian god with, like, giant cats rolling out of the airport. It could be really amazing.
Yeah, nobody would mess with me. To be honest. I'd be into that. Awesome. Very cool. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Where can fans find you online?
Well, I am an Instagram addict, so I basically vomit a lot of creative photos and stuff on Instagram, but I guess just, on Twitter as well. I don't know. There's my record company, which is therewasanOldWomanRecords.com.
What was it?
ThewasanOldWomanRecords.com.
Okay. You said that very quickly.
I know. Well, it's a long title, so I feel like I have to shove it in there. Has information on the shoe and the band, and like news and tour stuff. And the album comes out like June 3rd, so we're going to be playing more shows. So around there.
Rock and roll.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
This is Marvel, your universe.